Kenya to Colombia, from Iraq to Korea, in slums, in schools, in prisons, and in theaters. Every day, people gather at TEDx events around the world to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. Today, you are part of a global conversation about our shared future. So what is this TEDx? TEDx is an initiative of the TED Conference, a nonprofit devoted to ideas worth spreading. We grant free licenses to allow TED-like events to spread globally. This event today is based on the TED Conference format and ideals, but is independently organized by your local community. So please make sure to thank the team of volunteers who worked so hard on today's event. It's their ideas, dedication, and time that made it all possible. It's they who booked all the speakers, and the views you'll hear today are, of course, those of those speakers, not necessarily of TEDs. But we hope their talks spark an exciting conversation among you. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for openness and for critical thinking, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you'll take out. And now, on with the show.
Good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing tonight? Good, great. It's great to see everyone. Welcome to TEDx Syracuse University. My name is Aaron Miller, and I will be your host tonight. Now, here in the spirit of sharing ideas, we'd like to present you a TEDx experience. It is an event put on to bring a TED-like experience to you here at Syracuse University. Now, the X in TEDx signifies that this is an entirely independently run event. This whole event is completely run by students, advised by faculty, and supported by community sponsors. Now, before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone to please remain seated until our intermission. The doors are incredibly loud, and we want to keep just the experience here and with everyone seated. That said, if everyone could please silence their cell phones, that would be great as well, so everyone sitting next to you and around you can have a great TEDx. And my last point of advice is to try and avoid the middle row, because we have a lot of our press there here tonight. Great. Now, to begin, today we have 9 innovators, game changers, and world shakers here to tell their stories about how they have evolved alongside technology, art, and their own personal experiences. Without further ado, our first speaker tonight is Petra Kolber. She is a movement motivator, a happiness coach, and a recovering perfectionist. As a 2-time cancer survivor, she is passionate about waking people to the precious gift of time. Her mission is to inspire people to move more and to fear less so that they build an inspired life full of joy and gratitude. Tonight, Petra is presenting The Perfection Detox, her story about how perfectionism ruined her life, but how she recreated herself after discovering being a perfectionist isn't everything. Here is Petra Kolber.
Okay.
You look like a slut. You'll never amount to anything. Your dad's a drunk. These words rang in my ears as a child and made me feel so imperfect on the inside. It triggered a desire in me to appear perfect on the outside. And for many years, I thought being perfect was a great thing. At the age of 16, I had my hair feathered and flipped and my ears pierced. It was the 70s, and everyone wanted to look like Farrah Fawcett. But my teachers saw this, and they saw my effort. They told me I looked like a slut. And this triggered a belief in me that to try and look pretty, and especially if I got attention, must mean that I was a slut. Another role model told me I would never amount to anything. And at that point forward, I was determined to succeed at anything, at any cost. And when the talk around town about my father being a drunk was no longer just gossip, and I thought everyone everywhere knew that my father was an alcoholic, which he was, I began to keep everything in and zipped up and perfect to try and control the chaos around me. And when these three events collided, it triggered my desire to be a perfectionist. And the collateral damage was the loss of joy. Hello, I'm Petra Kolber, and I'm a recovering perfectionist. Some see perfection as a driver to their success and in turn their happiness. And for a few, this might be true. But for most of us, perfectionism is actually the roadblock between the life we're living and creating a life of our dreams. The paradox of perfectionism is that unlike living a virtuous life where we strive to be the best that we can be and we view mistakes as mini milestones along the road to our success, perfectionists strive to be flawless, and they see their mistakes as a character flaw. It's not even that they made a mistake, it's that they are the mistake. And even the perfect moments have no joy, because they're never quite perfect enough. To paraphrase my favorite author, Anne Lamott, perfectionism is the voice of the oppressor, and it will keep you cramped and insane your entire life. And while not a disease of the body, perfectionism is a cancer of the spirit. And when left unmanaged, it may manifest itself physically. Anxiety, depression, eating disorders, panic, suicidal thoughts. Perfectionism comes in many colors, but it speaks the language of black or white, all or nothing, good or bad, worthy or worthless. And it is fed by shame. The feelings of shame that come from not feeling pretty enough, good enough, smart enough, at work enough, rich enough, at home enough, perfect enough. Enough. In 1994, the New York Times listed me as a rising star of fitness. I've been on many DVDs, okay, VHS tapes, and I've starred alongside Body by Jake on television shows. I've worked with George Foreman, Nancy Kerrigan, and the incredible Olympian Dara Torres. I've traveled around the world speaking to thousands of people and taught to packed classes in New York City. I've won pretty much every fitness accolade there is to win, and I've even been on the back of a Special K cereal box. I share this with you not to brag, but to let you know that even with all of that, this was never enough. Like any disease, perfectionism has many symptoms. And if you're like me, you might not even realize you have this until it's too late. Until you look back and notice all those moments missing joy. You look at your photographs and realize just how many you're not in because you didn't feel quite perfect enough to be in front of the camera. And you look at all those relationships damaged or destroyed because you were too busy being perfect to be present. Like any type A perfectionist, I had many symptoms. I had 2 eating disorders, not 1. I had anorexia and bulimia. And then in my 30s, my symptoms shifted to anxiety that then grew into full-blown panic attacks. Like any perfectionist, I try to manage my symptoms perfectly. Now, I could hide the tightening of my stomach, my racing heart, the desperate need to get out of a room if I felt a panic attack coming on. I could not hide my last symptom. My last symptom was a 0 to 60. I mean, not just a lip, not just a brow, full body, head to heel, 0 to 60 sweat. In less than 60 seconds, this little body looked like it had run a marathon. It was embarrassing, uncomfortable, and just another public display of how imperfect I was. And after every panic attack, I felt lost, confused, lonely, and even more imperfect. And as my panic attacks became more frequent, my calendar emptied out. For 2 full years, I turned down high-profile work. The Today Show, The View, the CBS early news show, for fear that I wasn't going to be perfect. The only thing I knew during that time that I could do perfectly was have a panic attack. I just never knew when it was going to happen or where. You see, I thought the very thing people expected from a fitness person was perfectionism. And so I thought they expected that of me. But the very thing I thought they wanted was the thing that kept me at an arm's length. Because who can relate to perfection? The pastor, Steve Furtick, tells us that the reason we're struggling so badly with our insecurities is because we're so busy comparing our backstory to everyone else's highlight reel. What would happen if we evolved our thinking and we stopped trying to be perfectionists and, as my teacher and thought leader Tal Ben-Shahar says, become optimalists instead? Now, my idea of an optimalist is someone who learns to live in the gray area of life. They learn from their mistakes and they leave room to grow into a life of their dreams. I also believe that if we stop trying to be perfect, so many of us would get off the sidelines of life and jump in and start living it with both feet and with an open heart. I also believe if we stop thinking about perfection, we can stop some of this hatred, this negative talk about others and about ourselves, because we get to silence that inner critic, that inner judge, and we begin to start living our imperfect lives out loud. Perfectionists look to see how far they have to go. Optimalists look to see how far they've come. Perfectionists go, no but. Optimalists go, yes and. Perfectionists look for what is not working. Optimalists look for what is. And perfectionists are terrified of making a mistake and are so threatened by the success of others, while optimalists view mistakes as proof that they're trying and are inspired and encouraged by others in this world doing great things. I know we cannot connect through this facade called perfection. And I know more than now than ever we are craving connection. But it's in the imperfect moments that our hearts speak to each other and the important lessons are learned. The loss of a loved one, a betrayal, and the ending of what you thought was your forever relationship, an illness, the loss of a job. Such imperfect moments in life. But these are the moments we get to reach up and we get to ask for help. We get to dig in and see the depth of our resilience, and we get to strengthen our courage muscle. And we also get to stretch the belief and knowledge of just how much we are capable of. And more importantly, we inspire and encourage others to do the same. Perfection would never have allowed me to apply to TEDx, because the risk of not being accepted would be too big a price to bear. And it would not have allowed me the courage to step on this stage and share my story. Is my imperfect voice and my imperfect story is more powerful than the perfect silence. Was this talk perfect? Probably not. I guarantee I'm going to look back and wish I'd put something in or left something out, and I'm sure I made a mistake or two along the way. But what I do know is that when we face our fear, that's when we become fearless. And as Elizabeth Gilbert reminds us, perfectionism is just fear in really good shoes. Thank you.
All right, that was Petra Kolber with the Perfectionist Detox. Our next speaker is Derek Grassman, founder of Kohilo Wind and mechanical engineer of the patented Kohilo turbines. Kohilo in Hawaiian actually means a steady, gentle breeze. Derek plans on using Cohilo Wind to be a leader in high-performance clean energy solutions and to help the world work together towards a positive global solution for clean energy. Introducing the innovator and cultivator of wind and his talk entitled, How Wind Energy Saved My Life. This is Derek Grassman.
Hi, I'm Derek Grassman. Now, most of us have no idea about energy. We simply pay a bill and flip a switch. There's no impact on us except for paying that bill. I was forced to open my eyes to the reality of what power really is. See, at 18, fresh out of high school, I had a great job, making lots of money. Life was awesome. Nice car. Stayed with a bunch of buddies in a really nice apartment. And, I was very naive. So things are great. And I go ahead and, just live life the best I can. Make as much money as I can. Have no idea about my surroundings. So at 20, I have a daughter on the way. It's great. So I decided to take some of this excess money and invest in some apartment buildings. So I buy my first one at 20 years old. Now life is really getting exciting. I went from working in factories to now I'm a landlord at 20 years old. And now I decided at 22, I'm going to buy another apartment building. Well, now I've got 16 units and bringing in about $10,000 a month. It's much more money than I ever needed. So, very exciting times for me. Now at 25, I find myself homeless in the middle of the woods, which was a dramatic change from having everything I ever wanted and all the money I could spend. So, it was tough to realize this new reality. So I get there, my first couple days, the bugs are intense. They want to just bring you away and just have you for dinner. And then there's snakes like you would see out of a scary movie. See, when I was 20 and all these great things were happening, there was a complication during my daughter's birth. So she passed away, which emotionally destroyed me. And then because of a couple bad real estate deals, I lose everything I own except for this little piece of land out in the middle of nowhere, Montezuma, New York. Now, this place is only known for two things: a really great winery, and it's one of the largest wildlife refuges in the United States. Now, one of the things that comes with a wildlife refuge is swamps. And I didn't realize when I purchased the land that you could see the swamp from the land. So there were a lot of really intense critters that were coming over and joining me. So, it was a lifestyle I never knew, never understood. So I went ahead and, cleared a spot in the pines for my tent, start gathering wood, try not to feel too bad for myself, because I knew it was my fault. I was naive, thought I knew everything, and I realized I didn't know crap. And it came out, and slapped me right in the face. And so I went ahead and grabbed all the wood I could, some stones, start a fire. Then my dogs are with me, and the problem is they live that cush life that I had, before this happened too. So I'll tell you what, they were not happy with me when they're getting bit up by these bugs and these big black snakes are slithering around us. It was intense. So you can see the depression in their faces. They're telling me every day, Dad, where's the leather couch? Where's the hot food you share with us? Where's the TV? We want to watch something. I mean, where's the light at night? I mean, we're not used to darkness. So, you know, it was a tough time. And, but at the same time, it really woke me up to how vulnerable we are and how much running water means to me, warm running water means to me, and light, and being able to turn on the TV so I know what's going on around me, because I love watching news. Luckily, I had a truck, so I could escape when I needed to. But the harsh reality is when I laid my head down, it was in, you know, not in pine needles, but just above pine needles, which isn't bad if it's temporary. So I start working my land. You know, it's a beautiful black walnut farm, and, you know, I do everything I can. So I build this little greenhouse. I love it because I can get out from, or not out, but into this new area that I created. It's got some warmth and gets me away from the bugs and stuff. And I love to sculpt, so I'm sculpting in there. You know, I create these big mud pies and I turn them into these beautiful works of art. And I just have a lot of fun with it. But I know that I need power. So I get this monster generator. Because I do have a job. I have a little bit of money coming in. So I invest everything I have into this big generator. And I collect veggie oil because I don't want to disturb the ecosystem too bad. So I collect all the veggie oil I can, and I'm running my new homestead with this generator that sounds like a freight train when you turn it on. And it didn't have a normal start button or anything like that. This is literally a generator from 1954, straight off a rail car that used to cool it for the meat that would come across the states. And, you know, this thing was intense. And, you know, things were okay. You know, I start building a little cabin, literally had a chainsaw and a hammer and just went at it. No permits, so don't tell nobody. You know, but ultimately I didn't finish it. And it was because at this time when I'm going to work, one day, I'm almost to work. I can almost see it. You know, a couple more bends and I'm there. But I also see this Oldsmobile coming into my lane a split second before it gets to me. I'm doing about 50, and I have no idea what they're doing. And I'm driving a Civic. So, needless to say, they won the battle. My motor was pushed up into the dashboard. I was crushed. You know, I can't even explain how much damage there was to me. I honestly shouldn't have survived. So, you know, now I'm emotionally destroyed. I've lost everything I own. Now I'm physically destroyed. Now I've got surgeries. I've got physical therapy. And then I've got long-term physical therapy. Now, that's not so easy when you're cutting your own wood so that you have some warmth. And you're hand pumping your vegetable oil because you designed your own pumping system, and, you know, you're doing it the old-fashioned way. I mean, I try to be as creative as I can, and trust me, I was at that point. But the problem is when I lost my physical strength, I wasn't able to keep up with this new lifestyle, which is just horrible. It was like I was back to that first day, you know, just destroyed once again. So I went ahead and researched what I had to do to have a more steady source of power. Not so easy, because you go out there and there's a million products. You have no idea what they do, how they're going to help you, and if it's the right product. And, I mean, I could ask anyone, where do you go to get a clean energy system? No one really has an answer unless you know a guy that knows a guy. And then you have to hope that they're being trustworthy. So I went ahead and got a battery system to store some of that energy coming out of the big generator so that, when it was time to go to sleep, I could actually sleep because it doesn't sound like there's a freight train outside my window. So the batteries were good. They helped me out quite a bit. They'd go a day or two without a charge. And then I went ahead and got a inverter system, charge controllers, and all these different components to take that battery energy to turn it into usable power when you're trying to turn something on. But no one told me the difference between modified sine wave and true sine wave. So I had no idea that when I turned this thing on, it would fry my fridge or anything else it was doing. So I wasted all this time, all this money, and not when I had a lot of money. I mean, these things did not come fast. It took years just to be able to buy one component. Because guess what? When I was in that accident, I lost my job. I was on unemployment. I had no income except for a little bit of unemployment, which meant I had to scrape everything I could up, and I couldn't sculpt anymore because I used to sell my sculptures too. So then I buy a wind turbine. It's just a meager one, but it was supposed to get the job done. So I'm watching this thing all the time because now, my well-being depends on this thing to provide me this power that I need so often. And I'm watching and I'm so frustrated because I'm seeing it track into the wind different directions all the time. But the blades aren't spinning. And I'm like, how is it that the wind has enough energy to go ahead and turn this entire machine? There's no bearing at the base of it. You're literally metal on metal turning this machine. So it would always be tracking. I've watched it do multiple 360s, and I'm like, how the hell did it even do that? It doesn't even make sense. But the blades wouldn't move, and then I'm even more frustrated because that's my power source. I just want it to work, and that's it. And I didn't understand what I was getting into. I had solar, but solar, it could barely turn on a couple lights. Nothing against solar, but it needs to be higher power density. So I literally start waking up from these visions. And I don't understand these visions. But what I'm finding is there's some sort of answer planted in my head. And I start applying them. Oh, and by the way, while I'm living in the woods, destroyed physically, mentally, and financially, I decided to go to college. Not a good college. Well, it's a good college, but it's a community college. I'm living in the woods. No one even knows I live there. And I'm driving myself to college. So I go ahead and, I pray to God every day I have running water so that I'm not, shunned when I get to school. But there were a couple times it was pretty rough, like on my birthday one day when I love taking my truck mudding, and it's springtime, and there's this beautiful field, and I take my truck into the field, and I get out to unlock the lockers for the four-wheel drive, and I realize they had just sprayed manure. And I'll tell you what, I didn't have running water that day. So math class was very embarrassing for me. And, but at the same time, I'm getting all these visions. I'm developing this new technology, not really understanding it. So this is one of our test units that I put up, and it was good, but it still had the flaws that every other vertical axis wind turbine has. Half of it's drag. So you have to get past that, and to get past that, what this is a cutaway look-down view of the new diffuser system that I developed through these visions that take the core turbine, which is in the center. The pieces that you see here are stationary. So the gray area is completely stationary. And what it does is directs the wind into the turbine. And all the black areas are vacuum. So what they're doing is creating this vortex within the turbine. So you hardly see the turbine, and what it's doing is capturing this large volume of air and compressing it into the turbine exactly where it needs to be. And then creating a vortex on what would be the drag side of the turbine, and creating energy in wind speeds that we never knew were even possible. We actually have turbines that will spin when the anemometers are not spinning, which doesn't make sense because there's no wind. You can't record it. This was one of my first test units that, it was more of an art project. It was supposed to look like a flower, and it was beautiful, and it did the job, got my point across, and then this was the second version. We had to do clear diffusers, so the entire outer area that's clear, that's stationary. And the reason we did it clear is because we were doing demos, and we wanted to make sure people could see it. You can't see it if it's all solid. So we found new form factors, where we could actually take this technology and utilize it. This is actually a handheld unit I designed for charging cell phones and iPads, because I think it's a cruel joke that we take cell phones and different tablets and things like that, and we donate them around the world in these third world nations that do not have power. So you give these children and these adults phones that can do all these amazing things, but they can't charge them. That is extremely frustrating. So then, my actual turbine that I've been developing, I designed an exoskeleton. So what this is basically the holder of the turbine. And what happens is it protects it, but it also makes a rigid structure that you can stack. Now you can actually double your capacity very easily, or triple, or quadruple, whatever it may be. Then I took it a step further. I realized that Steve Jobs, if he had to go to every home and install every piece of the iPhone into the iPhone, when he's trying to get it out there in the market, it would never happen, because it's not a feasible business plan. And these are extremely high-tech systems. So how do you take this extremely high-tech system, put it all into a box, and make it a deliverable? So what I've done is taken the best inverters, best charge controllers, best battery system, my own supercapacitor design, and then all the monitoring and controls we need, put it into a box, pre-assembled. So you have three circuit breakers you flip. When you get it, 3 simple screw-in plugs, and boom, you have power. Now, the turbine and the tower, everything is packed into the same box. That way you can ship it nice and easy. Now what happens is, you get your box, you pull your turbine out, you put on the pieces of the tower, which are fairly simple. The turbine only weighs about 50 pounds. You put it up, and then boom, you have the entire grid in a box. You have power production, delivery, storage, and monitoring, all in one package. And this is my engineer, by the way, who is an awesome dude. He calls me up the other day, so excited. He's like, I've got good news and I've got bad news. I was like, tell me the bad news. He goes, I just electrocuted myself off the turbine. I go, listen, it's not bad news unless you're suing me, and if you're suing me, you wouldn't be calling me. So there's no way there's bad news. I go, what happened? He goes, I had the fan on the turbine, and he goes, I electrocuted myself. Now, any wind turbine company in the world would be super excited to know that a fan, a household fan, half the size of the turbine, could move the blades at all. We didn't only move the blades, we produced usable power that shocked the crap out of my engineer, and it was awesome. So, it's a beautiful thing. This thing can operate anywhere. And you can run DC, AC, 50 hertz, 60 hertz. It doesn't matter, and it's fully monitored. Hook it right to the web. And the only part you see moving is the little piece inside. That means it's non-obtrusive. There's no noise. It's very safe. If anything ever happened to the system, if the blades blew apart on the turbine, it would hit itself and drop down. It wouldn't hurt anyone. Where normal turbines they can be very dangerous. Now imagine you were in New Jersey when Hurricane Sandy came through. Now you would think the safest spot for you is the local hospital. Now what happened with their local hospital is everyone was safe for a little bit, but then what they realized was the fuel to their generator system, which was on the roof, the fuel was cut off. So they literally had to hand cart up fuel to the roof to run the generator system, and that meant the lives that were inside that hospital all depended on the ant stream of people that were taking the fuel up to the generators. You don't want to wait till it's too late to make these decisions. You need to make sure that you understand your power. You don't want to be in the woods, I promise you, and not have what you need. Because, trust me, running water, lights, TV, TV's okay, but running water and lights, I mean, you don't want to use a hole in the woods that you dug. You want to be able to wash your hands after. Please make the right choices, and don't be afraid to do the right thing. Thank you very much. Just so you know,
All right, that was Derek Grassman with How Wind Energy Saved My Life. Now, with Petra and Derek, two great speakers to start off our TEDx experience here today. And in addition to that, I'd like to thank you all for being such a great audience so far. We're truly honored to have all of you here today. Now, up next, we have Doug Melville, a diversity officer and entrepreneur. Tonight, Doug will show us the importance in being different and how that makes us valuable and sets us up for success. Doug Melville is an SU alumnus from 1998, and now he's a Chief Diversity Officer for TBWA Worldwide, a top 10 ranked global advertising agency. Here is Doug Melville with How to Improve Your Diversity IQ.
It's Friday at 5 p.m. and you are ready to go for the weekend. Can't wait. There's 2 minutes left in class and your professor tells you and your 40 classmates that he has registered you for volunteer work this Sunday at 8 a.m. and it's mandatory. Everyone has to go. When the time rolls around, he tells you what the assignment is, and that's that you must rake the leaves of an elderly couple's home who can't do it on their own. Sunday morning comes, and at 7:50, the first wave of students comes. They're the blue group. They're the students that downloaded the raking app to figure out exactly the best way to tackle the yard. They want to know each inch and each leaf in each tree in advance so there's no mistake. At 8 a.m., the next group arrives. They're the green group. They want to do a quick session of yoga before they get started, and they also want to talk to the owner of the home to see where they would like the leaves placed. Next, arriving at 8:05 is the red group. They are irate and aggravated that they have to be here at Sunday morning to rake leaves for a family that they do not even know. They demand that everyone takes the rakes and gets started right now. They already made an appointment for 9 o'clock. And then at 8:30, the yellow group arrives. Hey everyone, coffee and donuts. What'd you guys do last night? You all got here on time? I can't even believe it. Do you want to sit down and eat before we get started? These four personalities represent the paradigm of diversity. All 40 students heard the same information from the same source at the same time, yet each person interpreted it a little bit differently than the next. The word diversity is a complicated word, and it actually represents how you view the world through your own lens. For some people, it means race. For some, it means religion. For some, it means ethnicity, economic status, culture, habits, hobbies. The word diversity is layered and complex. So today, I'm here to help you improve your diversity IQ. I never want you to go out in the world without knowing some of the few fundamentals and basics of diversity as it is today in the world. So this behind me is a snapshot of my family. When I grew up in Bridgeport, Connecticut, I was mixed race, half black and half white. And people would always ask me, well, which parent is which? And I would tell them, well, I have a funny story. My mom and dad, my 4 grandparents, and my 8 great-grandparents are all mixed race. So I made up a term when I was a kid called African American. I am the most African American person you may ever meet in your life. And I was pushed and driven because I never really felt comforted by the kids I went to high school with or the kids around me. I actually used to have a African Hall of Fame when I found out Mariah Carey and Halle Berry, Lenny Kravitz. I used to hang it in my room, and our African hero, Barack Obama, man, he really is on the Mount Rushmore. So what I learned from the term is that, is that people are comforted by commonality, but people grow and learn and strive by diversity. But people, when given the choice, normally hire people that are just like themselves, not people that are opposite from themselves. But we have to look at the word diversity as a growing term, not a term that helps hold us back and keep us back. Today, I'm a Chief Diversity Officer, and I work on Madison Ave at an advertising agency. And what I work with each of our offices, I look at them and say, how can we recreate the cultural diversity of America within our supply chain? How can I recreate the cultural diversity of America within each of our talent hires? So that's what I do on a day-to-day basis, and it only serves me right because I've really been learning diversity since I was a child. So today, 9 steps that you can quickly use and memorize to improve your diversity IQ. These are everyday things that anyone can do on their own. A perfect score will be 9. I know what you're thinking. 9 things is a lot of things to remember, but they're the first 9 letters of the alphabet, A through I. And secondly, if you want to be a genius, you have to have an IQ of 160 plus, so I think you could remember 9 things. So let's get started from the top. A, awareness. Everyone in here needs to be aware that diversity is taking over. It's more topical than ever. 50% of every baby born in America is multicultural. Over 100 million millennials are in the United States of America, and they represent the most diverse generation yet. B, be yourself. There is only one you. So you need to express yourself and feel comfortable with all the attributes that you have. If you want to have tatted up sleeves, if you want to wear footy pajamas to work, if you have short hair and don't care, regardless of what you're bringing to the table, you need to have 100% of you. Bring your whole self to work, to your community, and to your school. Next up, check your bias. There's a website online that was created by a professor from Harvard, UVA, and Washington. It's called projectimplicit.com. What you can do is you can go online and they show you 90 different categories that you can start with. And in the privacy of your own home on your computer, you can check your unconscious bias. Some people have biases against accents, skin color, religion connotations. So what you do is they throw a photo on the screen and then they give you 2 words to relate to that photo, and how quickly you hit the button determines if you have an unconscious bias. The good news is that we can change our biases, but we can't do that unless we know what they are in advance. The next thing I want everyone to do is look inside and go online to either 23andme.com or Ancestry.com and check your DNA. You can order a DNA kit, take a swab, it's a prepaid envelope, mail it back. You get an email that tells you your family lineage for 50,000 years. It breaks down your maternal side and your paternal side. I found out that I have 694th cousins that have been emailing me, and I'm 2% Neanderthal, so who would have known? E, eat out more. I want everyone here to make a commitment to go to a new restaurant in a cultural neighborhood and try new foods. This is a way to get all your senses involved. Taste new spices, listen to the music, talk to the waiter or waitresses in the restaurant to find out new things about the culture. You can go to Korean food, Egyptian food, Ethiopian food, sushi. Make the effort to go 1 extra mile to try new things. F, focus on women issues. While women represent 50% of America's population, globally they're considered some of the most underused resources that we have here on the planet Earth. Fortune 1000 companies, only 10% have a woman CEO, and they don't all have a woman on their board of directors. It's very important that we look around and empower the women and females that are in our area and raise them up and encourage them to lean in. GLAAD matters. GLAAD is an advocacy group that focuses on LGBT issues. The first transgender model was on the cover of Time. Orange is the New Black has really brought the transgender issue to the forefront. Marriage between gay and lesbian couples is now legal in 31 states, but there's still 19 to go. Gay and lesbian issues are civil rights issues, so you need to be in tune with those. Hidden handicaps. There's 6 billion people in the world, of which 1.3 billion people have hidden handicaps. It's very important that we realize when we talk to someone at face value, they may be facing internal struggles and battles that you cannot see. So be respectful of those around you. That's 1/5 of the population of the world. And lastly, insights and inspiration. That first example I gave when I started was created by a company called Insights. And what they do is they go into your organization, go into your school or community group, and they break down the different personality traits so you can communicate better with the different individuals at work or that are around you most often. Also take the time to inspire people to think outside the box. One of the things that we created at our company was called Diversifacts, where we measured how people consume music, what their favorite cardio was, on and on. But what it did was it opened up people's minds to diversity, not necessarily meaning race, but meaning a much wider and broader definition. Your diversity is your personal currency, and it is your responsibility to spend that in a positive way to help grow America and the resources that we have globally. You can evolve how we look at diversity, but it does start with you, so spend your personal currency wisely. Thank you.
All right, that was Doug Melville with How to Improve Your Diversity IQ. Up next, we have a Syracuse University senior, Haley Temple. Haley Temple is a tech geek and a storyteller. Haley is a senior at Syracuse University with an eye for design and limitless curiosity. She hopes to explore how technology impacts and transforms society. She's here tonight to encourage us to use technology to be agents of good. Here's Haley Temple with Terrorism in the Age of Social Technologies. Haley Temple, everyone.
I was sitting at my desk in Mrs. Brandt's 3rd grade class, carefully practicing my cursive. And there were about 20 other 8-year-olds sitting all together at our desks, working quietly, when suddenly Principal Garber's voice came over the loudspeaker. And she said, "Attention students, please make your way to the cafeteria for an emergency meeting." So we all got up and arranged ourselves in alphabetical order, shuffled our way down to the cafeteria, and sat together, all scrunched and cross-legged, about 200 of us elementary school students. And Principal Garber came out in front and she said to us, "Today, a horrible event has happened that will change your world for the rest of your life. But I can't tell you any more than that right now. You'll just have to wait until you get home and hear from your parents." I remember seeing Mrs. Brandt trying really hard to choke back her tears. I remember a lot of kids getting picked up from school early, and I didn't get picked up from school early, so I thought, well, clearly my mom doesn't love me enough. I mean, why didn't I get picked up early? Why didn't I get to go home from school? Mom's sitting right there. She's remembered that for about 10 years now. Still hold it to her. And all of a sudden, and so I couldn't really, learn about anything until I got home. And when the bus rolled down into my driveway, I sprinted up, I opened the door, and I said, "Mom, what's going on?" And there were the planes hitting the World Trade Center. And all of a sudden, there were headlines everywhere saying all these words I didn't understand about terror, radicalism, Al-Qaeda, bin Laden. And I asked my parents and my teachers, why? Who would do this? Are we safe here? And nobody had the answer. We didn't know. And from that point on, I made it my mission to find these tools and these technologies that I could use to get the information I so desperately needed and to be an active part of these conversations. During the attacks of September 11th, 2001, we were so limited with the amount of information that we could get at the time. And part of that was because our parents and our teachers wanted to protect us from the horrors of these events. But also the internet as we know it today and the technologies we use were so young. We've actually grown up with a lot of them. I remember I was 11 years old when I had my first social technology. It was AOL Instant Messenger, and I could talk to my friends on it, but I couldn't use my real screen name. So I created the coolest screen name I could, which was Sunkissed Curls 135. Next, when I was 13 years old, we had MySpace, and I loved MySpace. I loved being able to create these really cool, flashy layouts and then pick my top 8, and then passive-aggressively push somebody on my top 8 if I was mad at them. And we didn't have profile pictures back then. You didn't have selfies, so for my first profile picture, I did my hair and makeup in front of the mirror, because clearly at 13 I knew exactly how to use that stuff. And then did my pose, and that's how this gem ended up on the internet. So today, fast forward, these are the technologies that we have at our disposal. So let me get a show of hands. How many of you guys use one of these technologies every day? Everybody in the crowd. And the most fascinating part of that is it was organic. It's an intrinsic part of our lives to use these. It's organic. We want to connect with people. We need the information. We have this need to share. And that's something that I think our generation doesn't appreciate enough, because every like, every follow, every retweet, you're advocating for an idea. You're saying to somebody, look, this is important. This is something I think you should know about. And that's truly powerful. Unfortunately, we aren't the only ones who have harnessed the power of these technologies. Modern terrorist groups like ISIS or the Islamic State have been using these technologies to spread their political message, to inspire sympathizers, and to recruit followers from all around the world. And their popularity online has been growing exponentially. When I started college in 2011, they had about 1,000 followers on Twitter, supporting these ideas. In 2014, that blew up to about 12,000 accounts that supported their ideas. And today, in 2015, it's estimated that 46,000 accounts on Twitter now spread their ideology. So that's not even counting Facebook and YouTube and other ideas and other technologies that they're also using. Through these technologies, they're painting this picture, writing this narrative about this glamorous counterculture, this edginess where there's brotherhood and there's unity, and they can walk around town carrying these big guns, and anybody who disagrees with their ideology, well, they get to be beheaded in front of everybody, and they post it online for everyone to see. Now, the United States Department recently said that media is half the battle when it comes to defeating ISIS and their terrorist tactics. So, social technologies do have a place in modern warfare. If media truly is half the battle, then who do you think is winning? September 11th happened 14 years ago, and in my short lifetime, we're already seeing those scary news headlines back about terror, about extremism, about waging jihad, and it's scary. I mean, I am scared. But I know that this time it's different, because we have technologies and devices that we can use that sit in the palm of our hands that allow us to access the internet and share information at the click of a button. Imagine the world that we could create if we used these technologies not just to combat terrorism, but also to be agents of good. We've already seen the ways that we can combat terrorism through these efforts during the 2013 Boston Marathon bombings. Yes, it's true, the bombs did detonate, they did kill, and they did hurt people, but Boston became the center of conversation using these technologies. It became a lifeline. We started talking about live accounts, what was happening. We could connect with our loved ones, checking if they were okay. I had friends going to college in Boston at this time. And We even could use it to identify the suspects during the manhunt following the days that this event occurred. We've also used this as agents of good. Last summer, we created one of the most viral campaigns online through a simple action of capturing a video of somebody dumping a bucket of ice on our head. The ALS Ice Bucket Challenge raised money and awareness for a disease that I hold near and dear to my heart because it claimed the life of my grandmother when I was 7 years old. Not only did we dump buckets of ice on our head, it got the attention of celebrities and sports teams and people all across the world about this disease. In the summer of 2013, the ALS Association raised $2.6 million in the month of August. In 2014, during the challenge, they raised $88.5 million in a month alone. How incredible is that? It also became a way to learn about this awareness. We use these social technologies to learn more about the disease. So if you can tell ALS-related articles, the searches for them are need to learn more about it in English and multiplied by 18 times. But we learned about it in other languages too, so people were trying to look it up in German, in Spanish, and Chinese. So this truly became a global issue that started with a simple little act. Some cold water, ice, not too shabby, right? So today, I want to challenge all of you to use these technologies not only to combat terrorism, but also to be agents of good. So we can change the conversation to diminish the impact that terrorism has on our society and the voice of terror and fear in our world. I can't wait to work with all of you to make terrorism a part of our past and to make the conversation better for our future. Thank you. Oh my God, that's awesome.
All right, that was Haley Temple with Terrorism in the Age of Social Technologies. Up next, we have Sean Kirst. Our next speaker for the night is a Syracuse writer, upstate storyteller, and the voice for Tales Untold. Sean has been a columnist since 1991 with the Post-Standard and Syracuse.com. He has been a working journalist in upstate New York for more than 40 years. In 2009, he received the Ernie Pyle Award, given to one American journalist each year for human interest writing about the lives, dreams, and struggles of everyday Americans. This is At the Lighthouse, Why I Tell Stories, with Sean Kirst.
When I was a child, my family moved a lot. Between the time I was 5 and 8 years old, we moved 4 times. And what you discover is that every time you move when you're a child, you move into a situation of loneliness, a situation of solitude. And in essence, what you have when you get into that situation is the story you bring with you and the story you have to create. And what you have to count on between those two situations is the idea that your story, in the end, will lift you up. So I guess it's no surprise then that what I eventually became is a journalist, but in reality, a storyteller. It's what I've been doing now for over 40 years in upstate New York in a lot of different cities. I've written about lives lost. I've written about lives saved. I've written about places built up. I've written about places torn down. Sometimes I'll get invitations to go out in the community and speak to community groups or speak to students. And I'll talk about storytelling. And invariably, someone will put their hand up and they'll say, Mr. Kirst, what's the most memorable story you ever worked on? And when I get that question, I always have to say, to fully understand what I do, you've got to come with me to the lighthouse. Now, the lighthouse that I'm referring to is in Oswego, New York. 25 years ago, I was a young writer, and I was stationed there after I was hired by the Syracuse Post-Standard. Oswego is a lakefront town with a big harbor. In the middle of that harbor is a white lighthouse with a red light that pulsates all the time. So I get sent there. I'm in my 20s. I was haunted, fascinated by that lighthouse. But there were other stories to write, crime stories and town issues and politics. And days went by, and I never got around to writing about the lighthouse. I knew that it was run by the Coast Guard. I knew that it was not manned, that it was automated. But I didn't know the history, didn't know what the story was, and I was dying to write about it. One day my phone rings, and it's the Post-Standard in Syracuse, and they say, we want you to come downtown. So I've only got 2 weeks left in Oswego. It's March, the time of year that we're all familiar with, that gray, misty, cold, late March, early April time of year. So I call the Coast Guard, and I say, before I leave Oswego, I'd like to write a story about the lighthouse. And they say, you're in luck. Come out next week. Show up early in the morning. We're going out there to maintain it. We make one trip out there every spring. So I go to the Coast Guard station, and what's important to remember is it is April 1st, April Fool's Day, when I get to that Coast Guard station. And so I show up, and they throw me a yellow slicker. I'm with our photographer, a guy named John Barry. And we both suit up in these yellow slickers, and we're walking out to the Coast Guard boat. And I walk by two guys who are standing by the window in the Coast Guard station. Now, what you have to visualize is that the lighthouse is out in the middle of the harbor in Oswego, and there's a break wall that runs out to it. But it's quicker to get to by boat. Long walk in that break wall. And these two guys at the Coast Guard station are standing out looking out the window at the lighthouse. And I walk by, and they say, hey, where are you going? I said, I'm going out to see the lighthouse. These two Coast Guard guys say, well, we don't go out there. You don't go out there. Why not? A couple of your guys are taking me out there in the boat, and they say, well, we don't go out there. It's haunted. Haunted. Come on. And all of a sudden, it's April 1st. It's April Fool's Day. It's all a setup, right? They're going to get me and the photographer out to the lighthouse. There's going to be somebody out there with a sheet. They're going to jump out. They're going to scare us. They're going to have themselves a couple of journalists. So I know what this is. I know the story, right? Say, okay, fellas, you got me. Let's just go out and see the lighthouse for real. No, it's haunted. Come on. No, if you stand here and you look out across the lake at night, you'll see lights burning in the window of the lighthouse. But when you go out there, what you're going to see is that the windows are boarded up. There can't be lights burning in there. And we'll go out there, and there'll be a light bulb laying in the floor when we go inside. And we'll take that light bulb, we'll screw it back in the light, we'll lock the doors when we leave, and the next time we go out there, light bulb will be out again on the floor, and there's no way into that lighthouse. You can't get into it. And if you listen hard when you go out there, they say to me, you can hear voices. And the story they tell me is they don't know exactly what the deal is, but there was a tragedy at the lighthouse, a disaster. Lighthouse keeper was killed. His spirit's still out there haunting the lighthouse. So I'm having a little ripple of chills that perhaps you're having now too. And I walk out to the boat, and I get on the boat with the Coast Guard guys, and we go out there. But my feeling about that lighthouse is a little different, one story becoming another story. And we get out there, and we tie up, and they swing open the door. Now remember, it's no longer manned. It's automated. And we go in there, and there's a couple of old pieces of furniture going back from the days when they kept people there around the clock. And it's cement and tubular. And the wind is whistling through this thing. And if you hear that wind, if you want to hear voices, you're hearing voices. And John Barry, the photographer, and I are in there, I'd say, 180 seconds, and we've seen enough. This is quite a lighthouse. We're ready to go back to shore now, please. So, we get out, we get in the boat, we go back to the Coast Guard station, and I got to tell you, I'm still thinking this is an April Fool's Day joke. I still think they're yanking my chain. I walk through the Coast Guard station. I go to the office of the chief, commanding officer at that station. I sit at the desk, I look across at him, and I say, level with me now. You guys are out there saying the lighthouse is haunted. This is a joke, right? And the chief of that Coast Guard station, on the record, looks back at me and says, we've all seen things out there we don't understand. So I'm like, oh my God, right? I get in the car and I drive right to the Oswego Library, this building like a castle built by Garrett Smith, the abolitionist, with a donation he made in the 19th century. Magnificent building. And I go in there and I start pulling down books and clippings and looking back into history. And what do I find? December 1942. Storm blows into Oswego. They're calling it the storm of the century. Gale force winds. Waves whipped up. They said the waves were hitting the lighthouse so hard that breakers went over the top of them. Imagine that. At that time, lighthouse is still manned. Somebody there 24/7, round the clock. So they got a guy out in the lighthouse, Coast Guard does, and they can't get him out of there. Storm blows in. Now, what you got to picture with the Oswego Harbor is if you've had children and you put a child in the bathtub, you know what happens when that child kicks his legs. Waves knock around your tub, splash up, splash down. The Oswego Lighthouse, there's a break wall, there's a river, there's a bank, and when the lake blows in there hard, it's the same effect as waves getting kicked up in a bathtub. The Great Lakes have personality. They're violent when the wind kicks up. So you've got this going on in the harbor in front of the lighthouse, and you've got a guy stuck in there, and you've got days going on. Coast Guard starts getting nervous. Their lighthouse keeper is hungry, he's thirsty, and he's trapped by the weather. They finally decide, when the storm abates just a little bit, they're going to send a boat out to rescue him, a picket boat. They go down to the barracks and they say, we need volunteers. 9 hands go up. Boat leaves with 9 guys on it. Storm's down a little bit, powerful engine, everything's good. Makes it out to the lighthouse, they tie up. 2 guys get on to go into the lighthouse. 1 guy comes off, so now you got 8 guys on the boat. Everything's going beautifully. They untie, they pull out maybe 5 feet, 10 feet. Engine dies. December 4th, 1942. Waves in the harbor pick that boat up, smash it off the breakwall. 2 guys in the front of the boat, man, just dive forward, get into the water, crawl up on the breakwall. Breakwall is covered with ice, blinding wind, 0 temperatures. They turn around and look out in the water, and there's 6 friends thrown into the harbor, too far away to help, lost. 1 guy looks at him and yells, save yourself. They're carried off, and they're killed. So that's the story of the lighthouse, the true story of the Oswego Lighthouse. 2 guys in the breakwall were rescued. It's a story I write because a story became a story, became another story. So I write that paper for that story for the Syracuse Post-Standard, and then I got to move down to the newsroom in Syracuse, new job. So I go down there. A couple weeks later, a letter arrives in the mail. It's written in that beautiful cursive handwriting that a lot of you will remember. People who came up in the 30s and the 40s, the way they write. It's a beautiful letter, and it says, Mr. Kurst, thanks for remembering. Thanks for writing that story. My brother, Irving Ginsberg, was one of the men killed at the lighthouse. But I just want to tell you, if that lighthouse is haunted, it's haunted by the ghosts of bad decisions. Because what they should have done that day is just waited out the storm. Lighthouse keeper would have been thirsty, would have been hungry, would have been cold, would have been uncomfortable, but he would have been alive if they just waited. They went too fast. So the letter broke my heart, right? I sat down, I wrote a reply. I said, I am so sorry about your brother. He was a hero. God bless you. And I'd send the letter off. And then I go on because the job's the job, and there were other stories to write. Eventually, they moved me to sports. I became a sports columnist. And the years go by, and it gets to be 1996. And my editors come to me, and they say, hey, would you like to be a metropolitan columnist, a news columnist, a storyteller? That's what I wanted to do since I was a kid. I took that job. It's October 1996. I accept that job. Halloween's coming. So I walk into this job fresh. Got to come up with a Halloween column. The Haunted Lighthouse. I'll write about the Haunted Lighthouse. I got my file. I pull it out. I find the letter. I call the woman. I say, I want to write about your brother. I want to write about that story you told me about what should have happened at the lighthouse. And she says to me, now remember, by this time, she's probably in her 60s. Easy. She says to me, I'm thrilled you want to write about Irving, but you don't want to talk to me. You want to talk to my father. Her father? This is a guy who was killed as a young man in the early 1940s. She says, yeah, my father, David Ginsburg. Give him a call. So I do. And he says, come on out. I absolutely will talk to you about my son. David Ginsburg in DeWitt, New York, 98 years old. And what I remember, like I'm looking at you, is that I get out to DeWitt, I go into that apartment, knock on the door, David says, come in, and he is sitting like this corner, right? He is sitting in this corner in an armchair, next to him on a table, picture of his son Irving, in his Coast Guard uniform. Bang, that's what I see when I walk in the door. I said, Mr. Ginsburg, what's the story? And this is the story he tells me as a story becomes another story. David Ginsburg, early in the 20th century, young man in Syracuse, New York. World War breaks out in Europe, World War I. America takes its time, then gets involved. David Ginsburg signs up to go fight in World War I. He winds up at a place called Belleau Wood. Belleau Wood, one of the epic battles in American history. Mainly Marines, some Army, on one side of a grain field. The other side of that wheat field is woods, and the Germans are in the woods, and the American troops are over here. Americans go up through the grain field. David tells me about running through that field. He's got guys on both sides of him, and they're being machine gunned, mowed down. Somehow he survives and makes it into the woods, where it's combat by bayonet, face-to-face combat. What I'll never forget is David Ginsburg saying to me, it went fast, 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 and then he wept. And he lived, survived, to bring that home with him to Syracuse, New York, where he became a milkman. Milkman, a peaceful guy who just loved life, loved being home, and loved his family. Married a woman named Molly. Their oldest boy, Irving Ginsburg. Irving, first it was a horse and wagon, then it was a milk truck. Irving, from early childhood, that extraordinary bond between a very special son and his father. Irving, up early in the morning to deliver milk with his father, at his side, right hand, not just a son, but a friend. That was the bond those two have. Irving goes to Central High School in Syracuse, New York, where he is a quarterback on the football team. He's a bright student. Everything is in front of this young man. Pearl Harbor gets bombed. World War II begins. Irving looks around. All of his friends are going to war. They're all going off. He wants to go. The world is at war. He wants to go. He goes to his father. Dad, I got to sign up. I got to go. And David says, no. I've seen it. I know what war is. I know what it's going to do to you. And even if you live, I know what you will bring back. You are not going to war, son. Irving says to his father, I got to go, Dad. Everybody's going. I got to do this, just like you had to do it. David says to him, son, we're going to compromise on this. Join the Coast Guard. They station Irving Ginsburg in Oswego, New York. Beautiful duty. Hour from Syracuse. Sometimes he'd send gifts to his parents by telegram. Birthdays, little presents. Remember, this is just after the Depression. People are still broke, so it mattered. Irving Ginsburg is in that barracks December 4th, 1942, when his commanding officer comes down looking for volunteers. Jumps off his bunk, finds a pair of empty boots that belonged to a close friend of his, Andy Cisternino. Andy was on leave that weekend. Irving put those boots on, got in the boat, makes it to the lighthouse. He's in the boat when they untie. He's in the boat when the engine dies. He's a strong swimmer, a terrific athlete. He's the guy who in the water looks up at those guys on the break wall and he screams, save yourselves. Next day, Syracuse, New York, David and Molly get a telegram. Molly sees the guy coming, thinks it's a Hanukkah gift. They've lost their boy. That's what they find out by telegram. They go to Oswego to see the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard makes them a promise. Your son and those who died with him is a hero. We're going to build a monument to him, a memorial. We promise you that. Let's just get through this war first. He will not be forgotten. So the Ginsburgs take that promise to heart. World War II continues. Remember, there's no Huffington Post. There's no CNN. 6 guys killed in a lakefront accident in Oswego, New York, are not headline news across the United States, especially when millions of people around the world are being killed, especially when 400,000 Americans are going to die. War continues, 1945 comes, Coast Guard forgets. No monument goes up. Ginsburgs don't forget. David's waiting. Molly's waiting. Life goes on. Late 1940s, David Ginsburg makes a vow. I am not returning to Oswego, New York, he says, until they build a monument to my boy. 1950s, 1960s, just keeps going. Molly dies. David makes it into his 90s. The promise is unkept. He's sitting in the corner of that living room with his son's picture on the table next to him the day I walk in. Stories into stories into stories. So I got no choice, right? What am I going to do? I'm going to write this story. I got to write the story about the lighthouse. So I do, and there's a couple guys with big hearts in the U.S. Coast Guard. December 4th, 1996, morning. Exact moment the boat pushed off in 1942, another boat pushes off. On that boat is Andy Cisternino, Irving Ginsburg's best friend, the guy whose boots Irving wore in the water. On that boat is David Ginsburg, his arms full of flowers. Goes to the exact spot near the lighthouse where the boat went down in 1942. David throws the flowers on the spot where he lost his boy. A few months later, the weather breaks. Linear Park, riverfront, Oswego, New York, a monument is erected with the names of the men who were killed. Among them, Irving Ginsburg. In attendance, watching it happen, his father, David. Now, see that lighthouse today? I'll leave it to you to wonder if it was haunted, if this was a ghost story. I don't know the answer to that question. But what I do know is that I think now when you see that lighthouse, you might think of a pair of rubber boots in a barracks. You might think of an old man sitting in the corner of the living room with his son's picture on a table next to him. You might think of just how a story can take something you think you know and turn it into something else entirely. And so, if you ask me why I do what I do, you ask me about the power of a story, and I'm going to say to all of you, come with me to the lighthouse. Thank you.
All right. If there's any voice to tell tales untold, it would be Sean's voice. That was Sean Kirst with At the Lighthouse, Why I Tell Stories. Now we're going to take a brief 15-minute break. There is water outside provided for your refreshment. If you're looking for the restroom, it is out these doors. Take a left, go all the way down the hallway through the glass doors, and it'll be on your right. Make sure you return in 15 minutes. We have a great second half waiting for you. Thank you. right, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back, everyone, to TEDx Syracuse University. Thank you for returning for our second half of our talks this evening. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Charisse Laprie, an assistant professor at the Newhouse School of Public Communications and a critical media psychotheorist. Charisse Laprie. She holds degrees in brain and cognitive science and comparative media studies from MIT, an MA in cinema TV, and a PhD in psychology from USC. Needless to say, she's a lifelong academic. She's here today presenting The Psychology of Selfies and to answer the question, what is a healthy selfie?
Hello. I would like to share my selfie story with you this evening. This is my very first selfie. I was 14, it was 1994, and I wanted to be pretty. I didn't think I looked like the women on TV, I didn't think that I was valuable, and boys didn't make passes at girls who wear glasses. So I remember sitting on my floor, snapping pictures of myself, looking for a good angle. Of course, those were the days when you had to send the film away. And when it came back, there was a picture where I looked pretty. I was so excited because all I wanted was to be pretty. And here was objective proof that I was pretty. I held on to that picture for years, and whenever I was feeling sad or depressed, I would look at that picture and it would make me feel a little bit better. Now, that's not this picture, right? This one might not be as pretty. But looking at it, I still feel good because it's clear I felt good on that day. And these two pictures together begin to tell a story and take me on a journey of understanding myself through selfies. In 2013, Oxford dubbed the selfie the word of the year. And they define selfie as a photograph that one has taken of oneself, typically with a smartphone or webcam, and shared via social media. I think this definition is too narrow. Although it states that you can take a selfie with any kind of camera, it demands that it must be uploaded. So, according to this definition, a selfie isn't a selfie if you never share it. Furthermore, to go on, the word origin states that selfie is derived from the root self plus the diminutive, and I quote, IE, which makes an essentially narcissistic exercise into something rather more endearing. The way we talk about selfies, and this definition itself, is dismissive. Selfies are often considered something to be feared or a confusing fad to be mocked, but I think about selfies differently. I like to think about selfies as the digital evolution of the self-portrait. Nowhere in this definition does it mention anything about self-portraiture, which cuts selfies off from a long artistic history. Consider Vincent van Gogh, Frida Kahlo, Andy Warhol, or Maya Deren, whose 1943 film Meshes of the Afternoon I share with my students as an example of how to explore the self using different media. Although the word selfie was first used in 2002, we regularly use it retroactively to describe any photograph taken of oneself. This 1893 daguerreotype by Robert Cornelius is generally regarded as the first selfie. And Colin Powell got in the game last year with this 60-year-old selfie. His spokesperson said, a 16-year-old Colin may have been feeling quite stylish in his yellow vest. I think this is a perfect example of why selfies are so popular and why they're not going anywhere. Because we use them to document our lives. We use them to explore our emotions, to encode our memories. Selfies are the new poetry. However, 24-hour connectivity, digital and mobile technology has turned millions of self-portraits into selfies. Today, I would like to talk about selfies, not as mindlessly captured, compulsively shared, easily discarded narcissistic droppings, but rather as effortful self-engagement. I want you to think about selfies independent of the internet. Don't think about who's going to see your selfie or like your selfie or comment on your selfie, but rather think about your selfies as a series of self-images intricately connected to your identity. Identity is defined as the understanding, awareness, and appreciation of oneself. In social psychology, we often refer to 4 fundamental psychosocial needs that are required for well-being. These include self-esteem, belonging, a meaningful existence, and control. Today, I'd like to talk about how selfies fulfill each of these psychosocial needs and how different selfies can fulfill different needs. Self-esteem is the need we have to feel good about ourselves. As I already demonstrated in some of the earlier selfies, we snap selfies when we're feeling good, looking good, being good. We capture a moment in time and an emotion that we can tap into later. These include personal accomplishment selfies, fashion selfies, or any selfie where you think to yourself, that was a good day. I snapped this selfie during a particularly stressful time, and I looked at it, and I felt a little bit better. I really like this curl pattern here in the corner. I like this selfie so much, I revisited it during the election season and filtered it in the style of the Shepard Fairey Obama poster. Along with thousands of other Americans, I submitted my selfie to this filter to demonstrate my participation, my identity, what I believed in, and what I wanted the future to be. On that note, belonging is the need we have to feel like we are connected to others. Now, we take selfies with our loved ones even when they aren't good, right? You might have a selfie with your mom that's particularly blurry, but you still love it. These include family selfies, couple selfies, best friend selfies. Belonging can also be symbolic. I snapped this selfie when I took the position here at Syracuse University because I wanted to demonstrate my new group affiliation. Which brings me to meaningful existence. Meaningful existence is the need to feel like our lives are relevant and valuable. Now, this is more than just how many likes you get or how many comments on your selfie, although this is my most liked selfie on the internet. But rather, meaningful existence is that feeling that you matter and your life means something. Now, this can be anything and everything. It can range from selfies with celebrities to travel selfies. This is my Serengeti selfie from 2008. We take selfies when the world has an impact on us or when we have an impact on the world. We even take selfies to make an impact on the world. The social justice selfie connects our faces with social movements, and our concerns become visible. Our voices become visible. A recent study demonstrated that political messages in social media can actually affect the political interests and voting behaviors of your social networks. We take selfies to confirm our meaningful existence. We also have a need for control. It's the need to feel that we are active agents in our lives. Now, in the case of social justice, there are the psychological benefits of having an impact on your community. But in the case of selfies, on the most simplistic level, we get to take control of our own image. Such is the obvious joy of selfies. We get to be our own photographer. And with stock filters and user-friendly editing software, we don't just take selfies, we make selfies. And in that distinction, we have the opportunity to reclaim selfies as art and as an opportunity for mindful self-reflection. I call this self-engagement through digital self-portraiture a healthy selfie. On that note, maybe I'll add an IE to make it more endearing. So then the question is, what is a healthy selfie? Well, first of all, a healthy selfie is a form of self-reflection and journaling. Use your selfies to document your own life, and don't worry if other people say, oh, you share too much of this or too much of that on your page. Your social media is about you. And your digital history can be just as exciting as any book or movie or TV show. Healthy selfies are also about self-appreciation, not self-objectification. When our self-worth is connected to how many likes we get online, then our favorite self-portrait can become a negative reflection of ourselves. Take and make selfies that you like and you appreciate, and don't delete them if they don't get likes. Thirdly, healthy selfies are art. I take a poll every year in my class, and I ask my students, how many of you consider yourselves photographers? And about 10% raise their hand. But all of them have taken, edited, and posted a picture in the past week. When I ask them, they say they don't feel like photographers because they are not making effortful photography. They're simply snapping and posting. However, when that becomes the strategy with ourselves and our own lives, then we simply become an object to be photographed. As I said, the beauty of art is the opportunity for mindful self-reflection. Unfortunately, in our hyper-digital world, we sometimes need more cues to think of something as art. I recommend exploring different formats. I snapped this selfie in 2003. You can see I love curl patterns. I snapped this selfie in 2003, photoshopped it into my own Warhol knockoffs, and then commissioned an artist on Venice Boulevard to paint 4 panels, which now hang in my office. There are dozens of websites online that will print your pictures onto anything. Send your grandma a postcard with your favorite selfie. Design and print your own selfie book. A lot of people made fun of Kim Kardashian for posting and publishing her own selfie book, but she has discovered a way to take control of her own image, regardless of the paparazzi, and turn it into something tangible and personally valuable. On that note, I've been working on my own selfie book long before Kim and made her announcement. It's called The Media Made Me Crazy, and this is the cover image. This is actually one of my favorite selfies, but I've never shared it on social media before. My hair is frizzy, my eyes are puffy, there's a little bit of a stash coming in on the corners. But it's me, and I love it. On that note, healthy selfies are not perfect because people are not perfect. For the past 20 years, I've been using selfies to explore my own imperfections and appreciate them. Use your selfies to find your flaws and figure out what makes you, you. My last point Healthy selfies are shared judiciously. At the start of this talk, I asked you to think about selfies independent of the internet. But the truth is that selfie would not have been the word of the year were it not for social media. We love sharing our stories and our lives. However, contrary to Oxford's definition, not all selfies need to be shared. There are the selfies that we easily share, maybe pet selfies, and the selfies we keep just for ourselves, maybe sexy selfies. But most importantly, the selfies you make for yourself are the most valuable. Thank you. Can I get a quick selfie? Awesome. Come on. All right. This moment matters. Okay, yes, please take a selfie of me taking a selfie. Oh, my goodness. That's all right. Here we go. Thank you so much.
You can send your selfies to us on Twitter or Instagram at TEDx University. At TEDx Syracuse U. That was Charisse Laprie with The Psychology of Selfies. Up next, we have Bill Jensen, a futurist and a simplicity geek. Bill is an author, speaker, consultant, gadfly, researcher, and a simpleton. Bill's personal life fantasy is to bicycle around the globe via breweries. Today, Bill is here to get personal with us about the future. Here's Bill with How to Be Future Strong.
What makes you, you? Imagine unlocking every future you could ever experience with just that one question. How could that change your life? What makes you, you? What if answering that question could make you forever future strong? How could you change the world? These secrets and possibilities revealed themselves when I met a man named Felix Maradiega. Hey, Felix, what makes you, you? Hey, he's the head of an investment firm, so surely he's going to talk about his mastery of economics or markets. Nuh-uh. Felix began his story on a Christmas Eve when he's 13 years old, standing on the bank of a swirling river, alone, without his family. They are 1,800 miles behind him. And somehow he has to find the courage to cross that river without them. Because friends his age that stayed back home were being forced into military service. His mom lost her grocery store to the Sandinistas back in Nicaragua. And she made the toughest decision any mom could make. She sent him away, insisting, even if it was into the unknown, his safety, his future was on the other side of that river. At 13 years old, Felix Maradiega was given asylum into the United States by strangers. But he'd stay here only 18 months. He'd return home as soon as the Contra War was over. Now, I need to pause Felix's story for just a moment and be fully honest with you. As Felix is at this point in his story, I've got feelings swirling inside of me, and they're not about him, they're about me. And I am just not worthy. I mean, what were my toughest choices when I was 13 and 14 years old? How to deal with this zit that kept reappearing right here? Yeah, that's earth-shattering. how to stop being the dorkiest dork of all dorks ever. And probably the toughest choice that I had to face when I was Felix's age was what to do about a letter that I received while I was away at Boy Scout camp. It was from my first girlfriend. And in that envelope wasn't a letter so much. It was an invitation by way of song lyrics by The Doors. Sing along if you know it. Come on, come on, come on now. Touch me, babe. Can't you see that I am not afraid? What was that promise that you made? And how well did little Billy do with this invitation and this tough choice? Let's just say that my first girlfriend and her wife are quite happy together right now. You know, so come on. Here's Bill's tough choices. Here's Felix's tough choices. You know, it's like humbling comparison. But his toughest choice would actually come 2 decades later as the head of that investment firm. Some people approached him for venture capital for their business. And as they're sitting down and working through the deal, Felix begins to realize these are the very same people who persecuted and imprisoned his family 20 years earlier. What an opportunity for sweet, sweet revenge. Yet exacting that revenge was not what was best for Central America or for his soul. So how did Felix make this tough choice about someone else's future? He called upon the kindness that he received from strangers when he needed it most at 13 and 14 years old. He looked at these people who imprisoned his family during that war, and he forgave them, and then he gave them the money they needed. Now, I don't know about you. That is not a choice that I could have made. But Felix insists every choice we make about the future, whether it's for ourselves or a stranger or our family or a company or a country, must be an act of love. What makes Felix Felix is that he was born to make the world a better place by living a life of love. And how he found the courage at that moment to do that thing, to forgive and then give, was to call upon previous experiences in his own life where someone did that for him. And it was at that moment I realized Felix was teaching me how we can all be future strong. Within Felix's story, there are 2 secrets about the future: yours and yours and yours and mine. And the first secret is that the future is personal. Always. Despite all the hyperventilating we hear on social media these days, your future will not be determined by the next disruptive revolution, tech or otherwise. Your future reveals itself only after you make a deeply personal choice about how you will embrace it. And if that choice is to be open to new possibilities, that's the magical moment. At that moment, your past hands you a tool that you can use to leap into your new future. And that tool is the crucible moments from your own life. These are your past experiences that forged or tested how you view the world. Your crucible moments make you future strong long before you will ever call upon them. So the first secret is that each of you has already had in your own life a crucible moment that makes you future strong. The catch, you knew there was going to be a catch, right? There always is. The catch is that this tool works only if you use it to run towards tough choices and not away from them. The second secret within Felix's story is that you already have all the courage you could possibly need for your entire journey. Throughout history, our maps have marked where the future begins. Beyond this point, there be dragons. Fear, risk aversion, playing it safe, they all conspire to shrink our courage and pull us away from our own futures. One example of that I found recently. What I do for a living is I help business leaders make work simpler. And part of that is lots of research. Over 1 million people are all around the globe so far. My team and I, our most recent project was studying the future of work over the next 5 years. The number one finding that we came up with was that currently most business leaders are actually holding back the future for as long as they can because it comes wrapped in risks. We should all be horrified by that because that too much so, and that playing it safe too much so, is actually impacting either your future or your neighbors or your families or society's future. You can change that. You can slay that dragon. What we found during our interviews is that every single person who said they called upon a crucible moment in their own life to figure out what to do, they said that was what gave them the courage to leap into a new or different or difficult future. So the second secret is that we always need to remember to listen for and hear the heartbeat of our own choices. Your choices are what makes you, you. And they're always beating inside of you, ready to ignite whatever courage you could possibly need. And it is never too late to hear that heartbeat for the very first time. One of my biggest crucible moments in my life was 21 years ago. It was the night my mom died. For 40 minutes, they lost her in the hospital, and she was dying alone without us with her by her side. She was all by her alone. And those 40 minutes, I am never going to get those minutes back with Mom. And after she passed away, and after the grieving process, I had a decision to make. How was I going to think about that moment? How was I going to channel it? And how I chose to remember that moment and leverage it and call upon it and challenge it, channel it for the rest of my life was to help others based on what happened to me. I teach executives now, business leaders, something very important about their people, their culture, and their company. And that is everything they do. No, everything you do uses a portion of someone else's life. Everything you do uses a portion of someone else's life. How well are you using those lives? How respectful are you of other people's time and attention? How much of a difference are you making in their life for the amount of time you use? Mom's legacy is to help me teach others how precious life is. Now, I've been calling on that for the last 20 years. That's what makes me future strong, and more importantly, how I teach others how to be future strong. Why I said earlier, it is never, ever too late to hear the heartbeat of your own choices. It was only 1 month ago that I realized when my very first future strong moment was. It occurred when I was 11 years old. Now, I had a typical family, a happy childhood, a typical suburban life in a typical suburban house. Absolutely nothing unusual about it, except for one thing and one place. That was the 1 foot wide broom closet that stood next to the refrigerator in our kitchen. That was the most dreaded place in the house to me, because inside that door, up on its own hook, hung the strap. That was an old belt of my dad's, about 3 inches wide, very well worn on my ass. And whenever I gave my parents hell, which was quite often, whenever I gave my parents hell, Dad would grab me by the collar and force me over his lap. But this time was different. I made a decision. I chose that it was going to be different. I decided I was not going to squirm. I was not going to cry. I was just going to take it. I refused to react. That was the very last time I felt the sting of that strap. And in hindsight, I just realized, like 1 month ago, that was the dawn of very driven, very determined Bill, how I have lived the rest of my life. It was at that moment that I realized I could persevere through any short-term pain or sacrifice if I truly believed in creating a new and different future. Those are some of my future strong stories and Felix's. Now it's your turn, your future. Now, don't rush into that. Be amazing now. Be epic now. Live out loud now. But when that possible new future presents itself to you, no matter how difficult or new or different or disruptive or maybe even short-term painful that new future may seem, remember that you always have with you a tool that you can use to leap into that new future with all the courage and confidence you need. And since the future is personal, the next big thing is you. So, what makes you, you? What makes you future strong? Tell us that story. Thank you.
All right, that was Bill Jensen with How to Be Future Strong. Up next is monologuist Ronald Taylor, who will be speaking about the theory of double consciousness. Ronald is a senior at Syracuse University, double majoring in political science and policy studies. Originally from Hempstead, New York, he's been writing monologues and plays since he was 15 years old. And he used it as an outlet after losing his grandfather and while having issues accepting his black male identity. Performing an original poem, To Judge, this is Ronald Taylor.
In his acclaimed 1903 work, W.E.B. Du Bois wrote The Souls of Black Folk. A text that understood not just what it was like to exist in America, but understanding how each and every single one of us is kind of two people. His term was double consciousness, or the idea of existing within yourself, but at the same time having other people, places, concepts, ideas, or even movements dictate who you are as well. I am a recovering addict to double consciousness. And so today, I'd like to share with you this piece entitled To Be Judged. Your Honor, Your Honor, Your Honor, Your Honor, Your Honor, today I am here to share with you a case of the utmost importance and the utmost severity. Your Honor, this case is a divorce. I present my client, Mr. Chain, and the other, Mr. Gray Chain. Yes, this same sex pulling apart of people to dictate why the gray must be etched off the links of the chain to expose the true struggle. Your Honor, this case is not easy. Your Honor, I've sat in counsel with my client, and I implore you that my client has been destroyed. My client's very substance, very essence, very life breathe, and every ounce of my client is here for you today, Your Honor. Finding of fact one, my client is human. My client lives, my client breathes, my client experiences every single ounce of human life, human humanity, all the things that define what it means to be alive. My client is a living, breathing organism in which that has grown and been struck down from the very pinnacles of life down to things that may not necessarily even make sense. My client, Your Honor, has been destroyed. My client cannot recognize himself when he sits in mirrors and seeks to understand what it actually means to be alive. Your Honor, my client breathes. My client moves. Your Honor, my client has every capacity to be equal. Finding of fact two, my client, Your Honor, has been pinned up on a crucifix and crucified as two stakes driven into his hand, one dictating assumptions, the other dictating things of which we cannot understand. Your Honor, my client has been snuck into places deep down in mental conclaves in which my client has realized, Your Honor, that secret whispers of sexual assault at ages of 7 can't escape. Fallen down into soils like seed, fighting its way to grow because, Your Honor, the sun, even though it's bright, beats down on my client with the heat. It cannot breathe. It is burnt. Your Honor, my client grows. My client, Your Honor, my client is myself. Even now, Your Honor, am I being judged? Am I being put up on a precipice just to be knocked down again? Your Honor, am I actually equal? Your Honor, I rest my case. Thank you.
All right, that was Ronald Taylor with his original poem, To Judge. Our final speaker this evening is Domingo Zapata. He's a contemporary artist who uses art and imagination as an outlet to curb anxiety and to encourage wellness and meditation. Domingo is a Spanish-American artist born in Palma de Mallorca in Spain. In his private workshops, he produces neo-expressionist paintings as well as sculpture. He paints in both oil and acrylic, often incorporating mixed media, collage, and graffiti. Here is Domingo Zapata with The Healing Powers of Art.
I'm going to ask everybody to do me a favor that an artist normally would never ask. Can you all please close your eyes? Now picture this. We're going to travel through time, far, far, far away. We are 40,000 years ago, and we find ourselves in a cave, surrounded by cavemen. And what are they doing? They are dipping their hands in cold blood, and they're drawing on the walls. They are painting figures that they can imagine, tools that they can use, concerns, themselves. They are expressing that they exist. Therefore, we are now all witnessing the beginning of our history. At a time where we couldn't really speak or write, we were already expressing who we are and where we're going just with images. That is, for me, the beginning of humanity. Now, if you open your eyes again, my name is Domingo Zapata. I am an artist, and I'm here to explain to you the only way I know, by painting, the healing powers of art. We're going to separate this in two categories. The first one is going to be, what are those powers for an artist like me? And the second one is going to be for you, the viewers. Although, I want to convince you that you are all artists in your own way. And it was Pablo Picasso that said that every child has an artist inside. The problem is, how do we keep that artist as that child grows up to be an adult? Well, let's start with me. The artist, okay? What advantages? What are the healing powers of art? Why do I do this? Well, first of all, it helps me finding myself. How important it is to find yourself, to know who you really are. So, finding yourself. Now, that's extremely important. But another thing that happens to artists, well, to some of them. For example, for Picasso or Dalí, the frustration of having to be kicked out of their own country by the dictator Franco just because of the way they thought, their political opinions, or their sexuality. And then we have others, like Van Gogh, who was a little bit crazy, you know? But then again, who's not crazy? I find myself drinking sometimes, and I'm like, do I cut my ear or I have another shot? Thank God for tequila and for letting my demons go away, because by painting, I relax. I go to another planet. I concentrate in so many other things. So, let go of your demons. Often, when I get interviewed, they said, what's the statement with your art? I'm like, statement? So many artists with so many statements, you know? I'm like, well, I don't know anything about anything. You know, if I wasn't successful at painting, I would probably, painting canvases, obviously, I would probably just paint roads or traffic lights or whatever, you know? That's all, this is the only thing I know how to do. So I'm like, the statement, it's Vanity Fair. It's like, what's your statement? I'm like, oh. Okay, well, you know, I think there is many people qualified to make this world a better place. My job and my statement is just to make it beautiful. Just a little bit more beautiful. So for me, another advantage as an artist, another healing power is that I get to create my own world where everything is a little bit more beautiful. So you create your world. Okay, now let's talk about the viewers. So let's see. What can be those healing powers for somebody that is looking at a painting? Think about it. By looking at something beautiful, you might get in a better mood. I tell my girlfriend every night before she comes home, I'm like, just look at a painting. And then she comes and she's in such a good mood. Sorry, one of my paintings. Anyways, so definitely by looking at something beautiful, you're already being influenced by something nice, good energy, good vibes. So, better mood. What else? Well, it transports you somewhere else. It takes you to another place. You're looking at a beautiful landscape, or you're looking at, a portrait or an abstract figure. It takes you somewhere else. So it transports you, like music does, like food can as well. So you can just evade. It's been proven that in hospitals, patients tend to relax and sometimes even forget where they are or why when they're looking at paintings that are hanging on the walls. At moments of stress, if you have something to look at that will transport you, that will let you imagine, for a second you might forget, and that second might give you that energy that you need to overcome your fears. So definitely, it helps you forget where you are and why. And last, I would say that many times by looking at somebody else's pain, it might help you ease yours. So for me, those are very valid points in terms of healing powers of art. So now it eases the pain. At the end of the day, what I'm trying to get out of this talk is to motivate you so that tonight you go home and no matter what, you create. Because creating is not about making something perfect. It's not about drawing what you see. It's just about letting yourself go and express yourselves. Because without creation, we don't even exist. So I don't care if it's good or bad art what you're going to make. Just make it. Therefore, like the caveman states, though I exist, you stayed who you are, and where you're going, and why. About 6 years ago, my second child was born. His name is Paul. And like a Spaniard and an artist that I am, as soon as he was born, I was out in New York City, partying, smoking cigars, and more shots of tequila. But inspiration. Anyways. Anyways, what happened is, I get a call, and the doctor says, Domingo, you better come back to the hospital. There's a serious problem with your child. And we need to do a surgery, and we don't know what's going to happen. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. You talking to me? So I went back to the hospital, and those were the 4 most difficult hours of my life. But thank God, everything went well. And then they say, we're going to put him in an incubator for, I don't know, a few days or a week or 2 weeks because of infections and all this. And I'm like, oh, how am I going to deal with this? I don't know how to deal with any of this. So I sat down, and I could only look at him, and I had no powers, no nothing, Didn't matter who I knew or who I was. All I could do is pray and paint. So I sat down and I sketched him over and over again, and I thought, what is he going to be in the future? How is he going to look? What girls he's going to date? And I kept sketching, and that is what made me get over that. Get through that week. It made me feel better. It made me relax. It gave me powers. Well, now Paul is a little monkey that climbs everywhere, and he's perfectly fine. And so is his brother, and they drive me crazy. But I'm happy that I had something that I use as therapy. It's very important that you don't let go that artist that lives inside of you. Because it might not make this world a better place, but it's going to make your life a little bit more beautiful. And life is not about chasing big goals. Life is made of memories. And memories are made of moments. Moments that don't come back. Just grab them and enjoy them and pay attention to detail, to little beautiful things that happen around you. And those big things that we're waiting for, the big deal, it might happen or not, but a combination of little beautiful things will make your life spectacular. And if you have time, just take a second and sketch it and sketch it and sketch it. Thank you very much.
That was Domingo Zapata with the healing powers of art. We'd like to thank you all for joining us tonight, and we hope that you evolved with us here at TEDx Syracuse University. I'd like to remind you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and please keep your eye out for the archived video of this live talk on our YouTube channel in a couple of weeks. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our lead organizer and the woman that made this all possible, Emma Herrera.
All right. Thank you, everybody. First, I want to say thank you to my audience. and the live stream that's been watching. So round of applause for that. I'd also like one more round of applause for our amazing and wonderful 9 speakers that traveled far and wide to be here. Next, I'd like to thank our amazing sponsors, first being the Ruth Ivor Foundation. Unfortunately, they weren't able to be here, but if you're watching on the live stream, thank you. Dale Carnegie, How Cross Buns, Reese's Coffee, and everyone else. And to our amazing partner, the iSchool. You guys were great. You did everything. And our amazing MC, Aaron Miller. And finally, I'd like to introduce the team that worked all year to make this possible. Starting with our executive board, Stephanie Bronfine, our amazing curator. Karen Lopez, our event manager. Cody O'Donnell, our executive producer. Tim Kowalski, communications and marketing. Andy Berger, graphic design. And to our general team members that have been working tirelessly at everything we say. Starting with Sam. Jennifer. Harry Kelly. Our photographer, Abby Rose. Our other photographer, Lena Torres. Our website team, Tyler Rand. Thank you. Rohan. Thanks. Alexander. And to the people that really built this amazing tree behind us, Ryan Long and Christopher Deal. And K-Vel. Please stick around for we have a reception, we have a DJ outside, a photo booth. All of our photos will be on our Facebook page in a week or so, along with our videos. And with that, we'll see you in 2016!